Today on HTO Football, we have a special. We have the Athletic's Matt Slater to give us the latest on Manchester City's UEFA ban being lifted. We also hear on the proposed takeover of Newcastle as a twist comes out of Saudi Arabia. Listen also for an update on how a post-COVID world could look for lower league football and football ownership.
Matt, welcome to HTO Football. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Are you well?
I'm very well, very well. How are you guys?
Good, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, not too bad at all. Thank you, not too bad.
We've had 24 hours to digest the news with the Man City case. What's your personal take on that, Matt? I mean, it's a very multifaceted decision, isn't it? You've had a day to reflect. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm being really careful not to say or tweet too much, to be honest. And I'm quite surprised actually, just at some of the we've had a kind of afternoon of managerial press conferences, and I was a little bit surprised that Jose Mourinho and Jurgen Klopp went in so hard. I mean, if I was the press officers at those clubs, I think I might have prepped them just to kind of swerve that one. But maybe there's no prepping those guys.
Free reign.
You'd be the best press officer in the world, and Klopp and Mourinho are going to ignore you. And look, the reason I'm saying that is all we've got so far is a press release, and they managed to pack quite a lot into that press release. Look, there's no doubt about it. Yesterday was a big win for Man City. They were looking down the barrel of of the most extreme sanction that UEFA have dished out, that the CFCB have dished out. A 2-year ban from Europe would have had massive implications for them, for the project, Pep Guardiola, for their sponsors, and that's gone away. So there's absolutely no. I mean, that is a bald fact. That's happened. But is it complete vindication? Is it exoneration? I don't think we can completely say that yet, and that's because of that sort of little sentence in there about most of the allegations either being time barred or not proven. So we need to see the full written verdicts, and Cass said that the verdict would be available in a few days. UEFA have said right from the beginning that they would be willing to publish their working out as well, which they've not published yet, and that's from their decision back in February. They didn't want to prejudge the Cass case. So there are 2 hefty written reports that will have all the detail in that we haven't read yet. And I spoke to Cass today, and they said, look, we could get this out this week, probably end of this week, providing both parties agree. Now, I've asked both UEFA and City if they are still willing to have this published, so that we can all read what was said and how much was time barred, because I think that will cast a very different light on this if we find out, for example, that the allegations that were made by Der Spiegel back in November 2018, and we've all talked about and they're debated, and some of them we debating back in 2014, of course, when Man City were punished the first time. If we find out that Manchester City kind of got away with it on a bit of a technicality, that UEFA just didn't bring this quickly enough, that some of this was just protected by the statute of limitations, I think that's a very different take on complete exoneration. We didn't overstate our sponsorship income. There's nothing to see here. But the flip side, of course, would be if the report says more of the not proven, not established, and UEFA just didn't make its case stick because it couldn't. That to me, as a Manchester City fan, would be what I really want to hear. So that's my take. My take is a cautious take. Totally acknowledging the significance of the result, the main result, but wanting to hang back a little bit until I sort of offer any kind of real analysis of it.
Yeah, it's not. It's a victory. It's not a 3-0 home victory, is it? For sure. I think it's a
Not
last
yet.
minute,
I mean, it
a
could
last
be.
minute winner, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, look, this is the thing. I'm not. I don't want anyone to think that I know what's in the report. I don't. And I'm not saying that this can't be the complete exoneration that Manchester City have. The confidence they've exuded from the beginning has been they've been bullish.
Yeah, very.
Maybe that confidence is based because they knew they had a great case. I'd like to read it.
From my perspective, as you say, it's definitely worth seeing the details. But you'd almost think absolutely City would want to be fully exonerated and find the fact that actually they had no case to answer and/or there wasn't a case to be answered. But it might also work better for UEFA as well, because actually from their perspective, if they were found to be there was a loophole that teams could exploit or a loophole that Man City had wanted to exploited, that's sort of dangerous waters for both, then, isn't it? Because I don't think anyone comes out smelling of roses in that instance.
That is a good point. I suggest though that the number of lawyers that are involved, the amount of time we've been talking about it, there are lots of loopholes in the rules. We know that, and if they found another one with we can just string it out, and you've got 5 years to bring a case. That's out in the open now. I think UEFA, for me, it makes sense for them to get this out there, because at the moment they look, they're the embarrassed party here. They took they made their point. They said, look, 2-year ban, big fine. We've looked at this and we think you cheated. And now an independent court has looked at that and gone, no, no. And has given this clue as to why it's saying no. And is it just a very different interpretation of the time as to how long they had when that 5-year period ran out? And different sorts of lawyers will take different takes on this. Is it a difference of legal opinion on really kind of the whole statute of limitations idea? So I used an analogy yesterday in a piece I did and a couple of podcasts where I was talking about statute of limitations is really common. We get those in all kind of walks of life. I mean, it's a really solid principle in justice. But often you find that if someone has been found to have lied or deceived, then they cannot claim statute of limitation protection. So a really good example would be Lance Armstrong. With under anti-doping rules, they've actually just changed it. But at the moment, it's 8 years is the statute of limitation, and a lot of his offences took place way back when, because he didn't come out till about 2011, 2010. But anyway, but so he certainly didn't cover his early tour victories, which started in 99 and then 2000 all the way to 2005. But because he lied on oath about it, that was unpicked. There was no statute of limitation. He had fibbed and could not claim that legal defence. Now, I wonder, and again, we're speculating because we haven't seen the report, if UEFA took the view, their legal view was, well, hold on a minute, Manchester City willfully deceived us. There was a sort of cynical attempt to mislead. So the 5-year clock doesn't really apply. So there's lots of bits to it that I just want to know a bit more about.
Be interesting if City went on to win the Champions League, wouldn't it?
Well, quite. And they've got one foot in the quarterfinal.
They've
got a tough route. They've got a tough route, haven't they? But
yeah, I do fancy them behind closed doors, though, Matt. I just feel like their style of play is perfectly suited this training ground atmosphere.
I know. Well, that's
they played our team off the park the other week. We're Arsenal fans. For about an hour, it was frightening.
Well, we were obviously invested in the City case up until sort of the return of the season, when it became clear that we weren't going to get anywhere close to fifth anyway. So
sorry about that. Yeah, didn't make any odds there. But yet they've lost 2 games. They've lost 2 games since the restart, which goes to show that when they're in the mood, they're irresistible, aren't they? I mean, they smashed Liverpool. They've made some teams look silly, but then. Chelsea. That was a good game. I thought that could have gone either way. And then Southampton kind of mugged them a bit, but that happens. That wasn't it wasn't like a freakish game when you watched it back. It was a really, really hard won win by the weaker team. Southampton played that beautifully.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to get themselves finely tuned, aren't they, for that semi-final against Arsenal, and then the Champions League ties coming up. Their league games, they're in that position, aren't they, where they've probably got second wrapped up, and then But it'll be interesting. I thought Mourinho's comments earlier were fascinating. I thought a disgraceful decision.
I know.
How can you have someone that's not punished yet gets a $10 million fine?
I mean, he's not a lawyer, but he gives great quotes, doesn't he? Circus, disgrace. I mean, brilliant in a second language.
Yeah, just what you need, isn't it? Yeah.
Guess it keeps giving. And again, Klopp, made his point and then moved on. That it was a bad day for FFP. I think, I know some of the clubs, many of the clubs feel that privately. I just was quite surprised they said it on the record today. But
yeah.
Particularly because Liverpool and City, the relationship between the clubs isn't great. But we know. Look, there's an actual rivalry there.
Frosty, isn't it?
It is. It's bad actually between the clubs in a way that Liverpool and United fans don't get on, but the clubs kind of do. They sort of see eye to eye on a lot of matters. Maybe it's just
different sort of tension, isn't it?
Yeah, this Liverpool City thing has got quite nasty quite quickly, I think there's fault on both sides, but it's not a good relationship.
Might be an opportunity as well, I think, for some of those managers to sort of probably air grievances that they have with the FFP system, with a topical case. If these might be things, so rather than calling shots out for no reason, I think as Arsenal fans, we had Arsene Wenger sort of labouring a love for it and then a disdain for it in equal measure, at the different rises of FFP. And I think there is an element of it now, just sort of ostensibly from a fan's perspective anyway, and not being close enough to it, sort of almost protecting that elite more than it actually helps anyone else challenge it. So I think it might actually be an opportunity for a little bit of an overhaul.
Well, absolutely, it needs looking at, and this is the great opportunity, isn't it? You've just had a really high profile case, and here we are in the sort of post-COVID or the COVID era when they're effectively suspending, relaxing FFP for 18 months or so. So let's have a proper debate about. I think the thing that I've been writing about for a year or so, really, not so much it's the death of FFP, but it's the end of this era of FFP, and there needs to be more clarity about what it's for. So at the beginning, was it about debt and sustainability, or was it about improving competition? Because if it was about improving competition, it's failed. And if that's what you want it to do, then you really do need to tweak it and think of a different way of promoting competitive balance. If it was about making clubs more sustainable and tidying up debt, well then look, it's done well. And do you want to maybe relax that a tiny bit? Do you want to tweak it? Do you want to target it more at some particular thing you're concerned about? Fine, let's have that debate. It just there is a lack of clarity about what it's trying to do at the moment that I think,
and for who,
can be tidied up. It's not. I'm not saying rip it up and throw it away. I'm saying improve it.
Yeah, no, I think. I can say if we could quickly reflect though on what you mentioned at the top of the call, sort of a different type of fair play, I guess it is, and the news coming out, more muddying of waters, really, I guess, with the Newcastle takeover.
Oh yeah.
And it's not in the news today, obviously, BN being banned in Saudi, and it's just it continues to muddy. And if you've got any latest on that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you've outlined what happened. So today we had a formal announcement from the Saudi Competition Authority that that beIN have been officially made illegal in Saudi. Their sort of right to operate there has been removed. Not only removed, they've been fined. They've been fined, I think, 10 million Saudi riyals, which is just over 2 million quid. And this goes back to a case back to 2016 to do with how beIN were bundling their rights, bundling their offer to do with the 2016 European Championship. So it's been a long-running dispute, but I think we're all adults here. I think it's clearly been they had beIN for something, and it's now it's a very convenient way to punish them, to throw the absolute book at them in a way that I don't think anyone realistic would. If Saudi and Qatar were not in this sort of appalling dispute they've been having for 3 years, this would have been ignored or forgotten about. But anyway, it is what it is. It took me by surprise. It's taken beIN by surprise. It's taken lots of other people I've spoken to this afternoon, just or texted, kind of lawyers and academics who are kind of following this case, this because it is all, you know, loosely connected, well, broadly connected to the Newcastle takeover. So it's come as a surprise, and it's I think it surprises because it's the opposite of what we were expecting, and it's the opposite of what had been going on for the last few weeks, ever since that big WTO report into piracy and how Saudi treats intellectual property, which again was a complicated one, but it was really a win for Qatar, despite what sort of how Saudi tried to spin it initially. Now Saudi appeared to sort of kind of take that as, right, okay, we've been wrapped in the knuckles here. Let's make some steps to, at least publicly, do the right thing. So they announced, I think a week or so later, something like 200 new anti-piracy rules. And they just made some sort of positive remarks about, well, look, you know, beIN can operate here. The beIN has customers here. We've never tried to shut them down, and we have turned off the satellite feed for BOutQ, who of course is this very sophisticated pirate operation that popped up just after the diplomatic dispute broke out. So you know, you just felt, okay, here's Saudi getting their heads around the fact that the Premier League is serious here. If you are going to buy one of our clubs, then we need you to take piracy seriously in your market, and we have been telling you that for a few years, so we've got some leverage now, so please, you know, pay attention. And perhaps we can, you know, perhaps this can work for everyone, right? You know, you get your club, Newcastle are revived, more competition, more exciting players, great for the product, and who knows, in a year or so's time, 2 years' time, when the rights come up again in the Middle East and North Africa region, you could get into a legal contest with beIN with a Saudi broadcaster. Great, fantastic. That'd be wonderful.
And what a position to leverage with your footing in the Premier League.
well, quite. Now, I've been sort of expecting that. I thought there'd be sort of a kind of round up the usual suspects. Let's impound some boxes. Let's begrudgingly, almost quietly, let beIN operate again, but no. Here, the opposite. They've doubled down. They've and look. So now people are kind of trying to interpret what this means. Okay, does this, for example, mean that Saudi have been knocked back by the Premier League? Does it mean that they are refusing to apologise to Qatar effectively, and they are kind of you know, daring the Premier League to do something about it? Look, we really won't say sorry to beIN in Qatar, you know, deal with it. Is it like a sort of kind of almost a sort of third option that they have almost sort of jumped the gun slightly on the way out of this negotiated way out of it? So let's rip up the Middle East and North Africa deal, give us a Saudi only deal, and there'll be some kind of compensation that we could pay beIN. The problem there, I mean, that is one that Newcastle fans are clinging to on social media right now. The problem there is that no one told beIN. beIN are the legal current rights holder for those Middle East, North African countries, and should be party to any kind of negotiation along those lines. And two, does the Premier League really want to do 30 deals when it can do one regional deal? Yes, you know, Saudi's a big key market. But if they give one to Saudi, they're probably going to have to give one to the UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, and just the list goes on. And you know, a regional deal has made sense. It's made sense for a long time. It's not the only place they do regional deals. There are several others. Does the Premier League want to have 200 deals when it can have 50?
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a sort of a cross between sort of your options 2 and 3 there, as it were, the revolving door blind date, in terms of a slight trying to strong arm. But actually, they might well back down. You know, in some respect, in some form. But I think it's just sort of a flavour of what could come in the months and years to come. You know,
I agree.
It's interesting. You know, you have people like Rob, clearly not objecting to them coming, which is a strange one, because it's not like they've interfered, the UK government, but they've definitely not interfered, is what they keep on saying, which is unto itself obviously clearly giving the green light and interfering. So football ownership is definitely changing in the UK in a big way over the
it would certainly wake up the sleeping giant that is Newcastle Football Club, wouldn't it? That went through.
You'd think so.
Yeah, and given what we were talking about, 10 minutes ago, and financial fair play, is that going to be further loose and further relaxed? I mean,
Exactly.
Well, like I say, fair play takes on a whole new meaning if we open that door, but it might be about to be open, so that's something. We were reflecting in general on football ownership and that landscape changing so considerably. I think if you look at it, and I think from an Arsenal fan's perspective, we look on sometimes enviously at some dilemmas, but I'm pretty pleased to have sometimes a silent owner in silent stands. Quite nice to have a silent owner occasionally.
Yeah,
very occasionally.
He's converting some of the debt, isn't he?
Well, he's converting some of it. So
which it's common sense, to be honest. I mean, we're in a low interest era. If you can renegotiate your debt, you do. I think he's done it with. Has he done it with the LA Rams as well? So, it's a good move.
Yeah.
And what have you or heard or seen? I think financial impact. If we can just sort of look a little lower down the leagues. I think at the beginning of COVID and lockdown, there was a lot of fears that a lot of clubs would go south very quickly. Touch wood, that hasn't been the case as yet, but you still have obviously notable cases. Wigan struggling previously. We've had Bolton struggling last season. Have you heard, or what's your gut feeling around what the fallout could be in the coming weeks and months? Because we're still very much yet to get to the other side of it, aren't we? So.
We're at the beginning of this.
Definitely. Yeah,
we're at the beginning of this as a nation, just in terms of unemployment and the impacts on our economy. Look, you're right, and those fears have not gone away. Nothing's really happened yet. I think Wigan's a bit different. I'll get to Wigan in a moment. Nothing's happened yet because the clubs haven't had to do anything yet, apart from a dozen clubs involved in playoffs. Well, not even a dozen, but they haven't really been obliged to operate as football clubs. Nearly all the National League, the non-league, and League Two and League One clubs furloughed a lot of people, if not pretty much everybody. They got advances on TV money. They've been able to take holidays from tax, from VAT. They've basically just sort of been in stasis. They've been able to hibernate. Now, that's fine. I've talked to some clubs that have effectively got single figures employees at the moment, because anyone out of contract is out of contract. Like I said, they've sort of shed staff where they can. They're not putting games on. A lot of these clubs only have kind of part-time. They kind of ramp up for home games. They're really quite light in terms of full-time staff. So they haven't felt the impact yet. And if they haven't been playing, they haven't been paying for tests. They haven't been doing the cleaning costs. They haven't been paying for 2 coaches and all the other bits and bobs that the Championship clubs and the Premier League clubs are dealing with right now. So that impact, nothing's happened yet. Now, the challenge will come when we kind of get certainty around the start, and it's going to, most people think it's going to be mid-September, and we start to think about pre-season, and we start to think about, okay, putting squads together again and actually hiring people. So if I'm a Southend United fan, so at the moment we haven't got a manager. We've just said goodbye to a manager and the assistant manager, and he's taken 3 or 4 people with him. We'd already started shedding pretty much every high earner in January because of where we were in the table and our pre-virus financial issues. So the virus has actually had no impact whatsoever at Southend. Arguably, it's helped. We were going down anyway. I'd be amazed to. I'd like to know. I wonder how many actual staff we've got on the payroll at the moment. Probably not that many. The team that Southend United finished the season with was people were calling it an under-23 team. It was actually really more like an under-21 team. It was the youngest team that Southend have ever really fielded. They had, I think, in the last game we played, I think there was seven teenagers in the matchday squad. So wow. I mean, that's just one team, right? And I've been talking to other teams that have got very similar scenarios where they have just let go, lots of the senior higher earners and are operating on a bit of a shoestring. So a good example, I did a few stories about it, the National League and the gamble they kind of took with their playoffs. Now, if you'd have asked me a couple of months ago, and the clubs themselves were saying, we're not going to bother with playoffs. What's the point? We can't afford this testing regime, and we don't have massive broadcast income. If we can't do it to fans, normally football doesn't normally work. Now they've gone ahead and gone with it, and they're going to stream some of the games, but that's not going to replace their matchday income at all. So they really are digging in their pockets for this, and some clubs have literally dug in their pockets. They've
emptied them,
they've had a whip round with their fans. So Chester, Halifax, Harrogate to a lesser extent. So I was talking to some of those guys, and when this was all being put together, shall we do this? I think Barnet had something like 3 players. They'd let go a load, and they had to sort of get on the phone and say, "Guys, we let you go a couple of months ago."
Was that Barnet? You saying that?
Well, Barnet were
one. I'm a Barnet, my local team.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Harrogate were another. Harrogate, well-run team, second in the table. They were flying. They were the form team. Them and Notts County.
Notts County, yeah.
Harrogate, I think, said to me they had. Well, I want to get this right. I think they had like 15 players, but 2 of those were goalies, and they had 4 defenders. So they're going into these playoffs, and their manager said to me, "We can't do friendlies because we can't risk an injury. I've got 4 defenders, so we're going to do some inter-squad stuff." And they were all told you can try and, for these playoffs, try and put the team back together again you had in March. We're not going to let you bring in new people, but if some of these guys have gone and signed sort of deals with somewhere else to play next season, fine, you can kind of unpick those a little bit for just to play this playoff campaign. But they were effectively being on the phone and saying, "Do you want to just, guys? We're putting the band back together. Do you want to see where this takes us? We'll pay you for a month. We could get a couple of games in, and we'll get promoted. Do you fancy it?" Yeah. And this is a long-winded way of saying, at the moment things have been weird. And if you weren't in the playoffs, then you've just been sitting back and watching this. But in a month or so's time again, they're going to have to start being football clubs again.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's a very good point. I hadn't even thought about that angle.
That's it. That's the squeeze.
You've almost got the car in the garage. Yeah, you've got the car in the garage, but you're not trying to turn over the engine yet. No petrol in it, no oil, no water, nothing.
It was interesting the other day. I saw on Barnet's Twitter page, and they'd released this all these computerized graphics of what the new stadium's going to look like, and in the next minute, just thinking, "Whoa, slow down, guys."
Wow. Yeah.
I can't look that far ahead at the moment.
Be lucky to get there, wouldn't we?
Those National League playoffs are fascinating. I just wonder how those teams, what they're going to look like. When I think Bournemouth played Dorking the other day and got beat 3 or 4-1. I don't think Barnet are going to play a game. I don't think before their one.
Well, I think you're right. And then on the flip side, you've got Notts County, who had about a 30-man squad, and have announced a 24-man squad. I think for this playoffs, they were the first team back in training, the first team to test. There are issues there around, competition and the integrity of the competition.
Right. Yeah.
Harrogate are coming into this with 17 players, and they're in much better shape than others. And Notts County were back in training a week before them because they were ready.
Yeah.
And they've got a 24-man squad.
Big club, Notts County.
I
think. And I think Harrogate as well. There's a lot of bitterness, weren't there, around the whole decision with Barrow winning the league. I think Harrogate fans would have felt, bad about that one.
I agree.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But with talking of sort of ownership of clubs and how it affects the clubs at the lower level, they're often sort of described, aren't they, as hidden figures owners these days. I mean, the Silent Stand, the perfect example, I guess, with his name. But we had the Sunderland Till I Die, the Netflix series, Matt. We had a couple of the producers on a few weeks back, and we were all sort of waxing lyrical at the time about how open that documentary was, that we got to see the real the nitty gritty behind the scenes with the owners being so candid and stuff. Do you think programs like the Amazon Prime series with Man City and the Spurs one that's coming out at the end of this season as well? Do you think that's a good thing for clubs to do, or do you think it can leave things potentially open down the line? I know Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp wasn't particularly keen on one.
No, well, it burnt Brendan Rodgers, didn't it? He sort of struggled a bit to get over that. Look, it's the answer, sort of a bit of both, isn't it? I mean, if it's elevated Sunderland in a way that their playing, performances don't merit over the last couple of years. It's put them on the stage, put them on the map, really. In the States, I know, for example, that there's interest in the club that they would not be normally interested in a League One club. And the Netflix documentaries help there. But then the flip side would be, did you really want people to see what a car crash it's been over the last couple of years? Particularly, I thought season 2 portrayed the new ownership. They're not new anymore, but you know, there was a lot of goodwill around them, you know, as they came in the last episode of season 1, and you know, the good story, the good start they made to last season, and you know, their push for the playoffs. It didn't end well, but they didn't want to be in the playoffs. But anyway, their push for promotion, but that dissipated over the year, and then sort of seeing that play out on Netflix behind the scenes, it looked even worse. Now, has that, you know, when I talk to Sunderland fans now, you know, bridges have been burned. I mean, it's not a good relationship. Now, would that have happened anyway? Would Sunderland fans be furious anyway that they're having to spend another season in Linguan, and this season was worse than last season? Would they feel this way about the owners, regardless of the documentary or not? Well, as soon as they found out about the parachute payment money and, you know, some of the promises that weren't kept, and it's hard to know, isn't it? Because the documentary's happened and we've seen it, and it didn't look great at times. But yeah, look, football club ownership is a very, very strange business, and you know, Wigan's a really good example of this. So Wigan had a high-profile, transparent owner who was always, you know, willing to bang the drum for Wigan, and Dave Whelan, you know, was a sort of classic old-fashioned local boy made good. And
don't make them on that anymore, do they?
No, well, not many. But it's a very, very rich man's game these days, and you know, sovereign wealth funds, oligarchs, collections of US investors. I mean, it's the bar is high. So Dave Whelan took it a long, long way. You know, he took him to Wembley, took him to the Premier League, but you know, he decided his time, his family's time was up there, and you know, he went with a Chinese investor, and you know, the track record of Chinese money in English football, European football, is absolutely dreadful, to be honest with you. Apart from Wolves and Fosun and a couple others where it hasn't been dreadful. For the most part, it's been pretty poor. It never goes well. And we've just had this remarkable scenario where you know, one set of owners who we didn't really know a great deal about and didn't show much affinity with the local area appears to have sort of given up very abruptly. A lot of uncertainty and unanswered questions still about that process, who this second new owner is, and why they then immediately decide to wind the club up without really much thought, certainly for the local area, for the fans, but also a very irrational act. Because if you'd had enough of owning a championship club, and I wouldn't blame anyone for having enough of a championship club, it's a strange league, certainly in terms of its finances. If you'd had enough, well, Wigan were relatively well run and still have a well stocked.
Find a seater. Yep.
Yeah, they've got some good players. You just had to fund that for one more month. You had to fund it for one more month. Find an owner over the summer. You get a lot more for a championship club than you get for a League One club. And you certainly get a lot more for your players when you don't signal to the entire market that you're desperate. So 4 or 5 good Wigan players will now go for fire sale prices, sold by an administrator who has different set of obligations to a custodian, I mean, that just makes no sense to me, which is why I fear we're gonna find more about what really has been going on there. Because it just doesn't stack up.
No. I mean, that's probably a debate for another day, but I think that whole fit and proper assessments piece, what support can be offered, and as and when, particularly in lower league football, you know, ownership comes along, because then there needs to be some sort of independent sort of audit or whatever that the Premier League can help support, because you on the one hand of you have the Saudi investment fund trying to overtake Newcastle one end of the spectrum, and then at the very end you have a very different set of criteria.
Obviously, out of all the things that might change when football comes back to normal, I'm sure if you had a wish, if one thing might change after, I'm sure it's not going to be the drinks break after every 20 minutes. Is there one thing off the pitch that you'd like to see change?
Off the pitch, that's quite, yeah. Put me on the spot there. I mean, I quite like financial fair play, so I don't want them to jettison that. I'd like them just to tweak that. It's lots of sort of, I'd like a more robust owners and directors test. I'm a big fan of, and have been for a long time, fan ownership. I know it doesn't work at the top end, but certainly I don't see any reason why League One, League Two clubs, for example, could not be owned by fans. So I'd like to see more encouragement for that, be it I don't know, tax breaks or just sort of kind of government help to give the fans time to get organised. Because that's often the thing, they're up against it. So any kind of encouragement for fan ownership, but below, I do agree that the championship, it gets a bit lumpy and it gets kind of hard to do. I'd love to, this is not an original point. I'd like to see safe standing. I'd like to have the choice to stand in a not behind a seat.
That's coming, surely. I think it's coming.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd also quite like to be treated like an adult, in terms of a beer. I'd like to have a beer whilst watching the game.
Absolutely.
So, if you can have it, a game of rugby or a game of cricket. On Germany.
The Emirates is really weird. So I'm a season ticket holder there, and you can't have it in view of the pitch.
Well, that's
so,
it.
Which is it's as if if you turn the other way, you won't be angered by the drink you're having. But if you turn towards the pitch, God, hell would break loose.
Well, it's the ridiculous thing where people in the boxes have to pull the curtains. I mean, come on.
Yes, my season ticket's in club level, and 5 minutes before the start of the second half or kickoff, electronic things come down. And what, the game's not even started. So it's not like I kind of forget why they do the drawing the curtains down. So it's not, if it's raining, I don't disappear into a nice lounge and just watch the game from which I kind of, they want fans in the seats. But 5 minutes before the game even starts, they're as if just the tension before kickoff would send me over the edge is what they're doing it for. But
I think we should be. We can have a beer, can't we, while we watch the game of football, as opposed to trying to neck it in 10 minutes at half time?
When I'm watching Barnet, I need one.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's the best thing. It's the best bit. If going away with Southend, Jesus, I don't see many away wins, but pint at half time, one before.
I've got an affiliation with Southend. I was on there. I was on their book. Well, I wasn't on their book.
Oh, right.
When I was about, Tom's rolling his eyes. Here we go again.
Yeah.
When I was about 10 or 11, I was there.
Okay.
Boots and laces. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Steve Tilson was the.
Well, one of our favourites.
Yeah,
so, Any lads from your time make it?
Oh, I don't think so. Not by looking at the team now.
Any of them go anywhere else?
I'm trying to think. To be honest, I was on a 6-month trial.
Where did you play with Henry Lansbury? Because that's your claim to fame.
Henry Lansbury, that was at Norwich. Yeah.
Oh, Norwich.
I played him at Norwich when I was about 9, and he's done well for himself.
Yeah. Was he still at Forest?
Yeah, he's at Forest. Yeah. He was at Villa for a little while, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, he's a very good championship player. He's not quite that sort of level, isn't it? But
yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, look, I mean, the thing about Southend is we've actually got a good patch. We produce players. I mean, I think almost despite ourselves, and the current lot are really good. The current youngsters. I mean,
good atmosphere there as well. When I've been.
Well, yeah, when it's full. We're a bit fickle. Like lots of people, it can be awful. It
can be a bit too much.
Yeah, like Arsenal fans.
4,000 or 5,000 of just gloom. But when there's somebody to cheer, so you get 6,000-7,000 at Roots Hall. It's nice. It's good.
But anyway, thanks again for your time, Matt. It's fantastic.
No worries at all.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Speak soon. Take care.
All the best.
Take care.
Cheers, bye.
We hope you enjoyed that chat as much as we did. For all the latest in terms of guest announcements and pod releases, check out our usual social channels on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube at HTO Football. Also keep an eye out for our latest competitions and best of luck. Stay tuned.